Warning: this show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewers' discretion is advised. This show may contain strong language and sensitive or controversial topics. We are not attorneys and are not providing legal advice. The views and conversations are our own thoughts and feelings, and therefore, purely speculation.
The entertainment world and beyond.
Skywalker air miles feeding on a surface, gliding on water, constricted and conflicted.
Welcome to Purely Speculation, a show that exposes the harmful effects of the criminal legal system. I'm your host, Heather Lewis, the Executive Director of the Reuniting Family Bail Fund and practitioner of participatory defense. On this show, you learn about the unspoken horrors of the criminal justice system and meet fierce allies and advocates. We will make the best of our traumatic experiences. We will get angry. We may even cry. We most certainly going to laugh. But one thing's for sure, we're going to keep it real. Welcome to Purely Speculation.
When it free my sins and let them loose. They was killing me, I got scars to prove. Got me paralyzed, I could even barely move. Out the way I took the pain again.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Season 2, Volume 22 of the Court Watchers edition of Purely Speculation. This is the last episode of the season of this year, so stay tuned for Season 3. That's going to drop early 2025 with some new fun and fancy things that we got going on. So welcome my girl Taria, our Court Watch coordinator. We've got how we say some diabolical things to discuss this evening. So how you doing, ma'am?
I'm blessed.
Okay. And so some of the things that we have been seeing, so this is why court watching is so important, right? Because the judges, I don't know if it comes down from the president judge, if they have to run these new processes through them, or what happens, or how the judges just start to, maybe it's their own courtroom and they get to do whatever they want to do and don't have to run anything past the administrator or the president judge. But we've seen a shift in how the hearing schedules are assigned, right? Because we get a weekly schedule of the court hearings that are going to be taking place, the types, the dates, who they are, the type of hearing that it is, if it's a trial, how many days, if it's a sentencing hearing, guilty plea, all of that information is there with the individual. And what we've been seeing is that there's 3 judges in particular that have been, I'm going to say, stacking, for lack of another way to describe it, trials on one day. And so if we want to look at the schedule, let's look at the schedule first before we call out the judges. So this is what the schedule looks like. We've redacted the individuals' names just for privacy. It's not, this is public, so it is public knowledge. But if you see there on, which would be my left, you'll see F, right? That is all Judge Furman's courtroom. And if you look on the right, you will see 2-day trial, 2-day trial, 2-day trial. So there's like 4 2-day trials, all scheduled in the same courtroom at the same time. And it's like, how do you do that? So let's take a look. We can see Judge Furman. So you see who this judge is. And so she's one of the folks that is participating in the stacking of trials. And if we go back to the previous slide, you will see the next one that has G and H. And again, you'll see 2-day, 3-day jury trial stacked in the same courtroom at the same time. Courtroom G is Judge O'Neill. And he is known to be our drug court, diversionary court judge. So he oversees that particular court. So he's doing some stacking there. And in courtroom H is Judge Rogers. And so he is another judge that is participating in the stacking of trials on the same day at the same time. And so since I just kind of walked you through the logistics, Taria, give me your thoughts. And plus you are, and not just your thoughts, because this is court watching. So it's not like you just were speculating here as to what's happening. You were there, you were present, you actually had a loved one that actually was part of that stack. So tell me what you're seeing, what you think is happening, why they're doing this.
Well, personally, like you said, I was there presently. So this isn't something that, we heard from the grapevine, not something that we just seen on paper. Like, I was in the courtroom for these situations, and everybody was assigned to a 2-day standby trial. And it was a paper that was given out to them. And the paper stated that they would have a standby between, for instance, Judge O'Neill said he's going to do all 2-day standby trials between November 18th to December the 6th. And all he needed to know if it was going to be a bench or it was going to be a jury trial. And from there, he pretty much told the DA's office, because that day that I was in there, it was hectic. It was all attorneys. It was all these clients. Some of the attorneys for the clients weren't even present. So everybody was running around with the chicken off their head. Some of the DAs didn't even know that some of the clients was still on their docket. Their name still was on the docket sheet, even though the prosecutor got changed without even giving notice that they had a new prosecutor on their case.
Right.
Judge O'Neill was addressing some of the prosecution to, basically what are you, is it an offer? Is there a deal for this person? And some of the prosecutors was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't have a case. And he
said that's not their client.
Yeah,
that's
not not their case load. And he said, well, I know what I'm seeing on this docket, that your name is here. So let me know who it belongs to, and why didn't that person show up down here knowing that this was their case?
Right.
And he also told them also, and this is something that I never seen done before either. I don't even know if it's really legal to do what if you have an attorney that's not present, that he was telling the DA's office to write on a piece of paper their offers, because the alleged defendant is supposed to know if there's an offer not on the table, because they're the ones that have to go back and talk to their attorney to see what they want to do. Either they want to take a guilty plea, or they want to still continue on with trial. I haven't got to that logistic to talk to a lawyer to see if that's legal to do without a presence of an attorney there. But he wasn't asking them to say it in open court. He just said, write it,
wrote it down, slipped them a note.
I slipped them a note so they can know, because it's their life and it's their trial, and they should be the one that knows what their fate is.
And so my question is, if you experience that, or the confusion on, these defendants' faces, they think they're coming to court for a 2-day trial.
Yes.
And when they get there, so individuals prepare themselves, right? Regardless if they talk to their attorney or not, or however, their attorney is responding to them. As the defendant, you have to mentally, physically, emotionally, logistically organize your life in anticipation of having a trial that could potentially maybe have a sentence in incarcerated, right?
Yes.
So when we saw those numbers, or the 3, 4, 5, some of them 6 stacked trials, all of these individuals have had to mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever, prepare to go to trial on that day, when the judge clearly knows that that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And then another thing that was really interesting too is that he specifically told them straight up that don't look for mail. Go on the PAE docket and see what your next court date for your trial is, and that's the only notices you're going to get, because the mail is not going to get there in time. And lo and
The
behold,
trial will come before the mail.
yes. Say my loved one was in there on a Thursday, and something told me to check the docket on Saturday, and he was scheduled for trial for the 20th and 21st.
That's wild. Like, no, diabolical. And so we did a walkthrough in season 1 of how to navigate the PA portal, right? Versus the app that they tell you to download on your phone. Because most folks, don't necessarily have a laptop anymore. They're working off of their smartphone, and some smartphones ain't that smart. The internet connection is not that great. And people aren't necessarily tech savvy. And we try to navigate, you know what I mean, and show people the difference between navigating those two systems and how difficult that app really is. Because if you don't understand all the symbols and the arrows that really kind of move you through your docket or to a different case, because if you've got multiple cases, you could be scrolling, it's small, you can't see the date, you don't know what you're looking for. Like, most people don't know how to navigate that. You and I know how to do it because we do it every day. We've learned what to look for. But, if I didn't have to do it for 6 months, 8 months, 3, 5 years, it's going to have changed. And for me to go back, and it's going to look foreign to us. So for them to have the expectation that these people that are facing cases have the capacity to navigate that app regularly and now on a time frame of 2 to 3 days, 4 to 5 days, something like that, to really figure out that I'm going to try, or I got to take a plea deal of some sort, and then I got to figure out whether I'm going to bench or jury.
Well, a guy was in there like that.
Of course.
He actually told the judge that well, first and foremost, he had a toothache that day, and he said
the judge or the defendant?
The defendant. And he told him that he needed to get to a dentist.
Right. So he can't even pay attention because he's in pain.
Yeah, and his lawyer wasn't present anyway, so that kind of gave him a get out of jail free card that day.
Right.
But when he said this about, you're not going to get the mail, you better look up the app, this guy specifically said two things. He said, I have a flip phone, and I don't know how to download any apps, and I don't think my flip phone downloads any apps. And he also told the judge that he's not computer savvy, like you just said. He don't even know how to begin to do that. And the judge told him that he better get a family member or somebody to help him. So
if I don't have a family member, I just got to go to a stranger and ask them to look up my criminal record on their phone.
And then told him have a nice day and go to the dentist to get that tooth checked out.
Right. Diabolical. And look, they wouldn't believe it if you hadn't been there. Right.
Exactly.
Like, and can we, that's Judge O'Neill. Can we pop up Judge O'Neill right quick? Because this is the guy. And that's how he's running his court. And he is that guy. Like, he gives zero fucks. And I don't doubt that he said that for a minute. And God forbid if you have to come back in front of him after 12 o'clock or after lunchtime, it's even worse. So I don't know if that was afternoon or if that was morning, but that sounds like an afternoon thing. But
it was actually 10:10 in the morning.
Right, in the morning. Yeah.
He was already
that was a bad day for everybody.
He was already in his bag.
bad day for everybody. And so when we talk about the importance of court watching, this is what we mean. It is not, just the charges that people are accused of or the stacking of charges by the DA. I mean, it is all of those things. But here it is that the judges have just decided, and these are 3, I guess, would you call them miscellaneous criminal court? I mean, because they kind of, they hear a little
common courts of pleas. But yeah, they do miscellaneous situations. But this right here was actually trial. So this was actually called to trial. So that's
right. But they're not homicide. like Carpenter is homicide. Oh, I guess he's the only homicide
No,
judge. Everybody else kind of hears
they
everything.
do homicides too, depending on the situation, because
Right.
Judge Rogers does a lot of vehicular homicides.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So imagine that. Imagine that case being stacked.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think that you was in a vehicular homicide sentencing for Judge Rogers a while back with a young lady from
yes,
situation.
yes. Yeah, but that was before the stacking. Like she didn't have that. But yeah, this stacking stuff is wild. Because when we started doing the court calendar, I started seeing. Remember, I said, I'm like, why does Furman have 3 trials at 9:00? That's impossible. And I recall that I was going to see, and I went to Furman's our courtroom. I went to courtroom F, and her clerk was in there. She wasn't in there, and I was like, y'all had 3 trials scheduled today. What happened? He said, oh, they all took a plea deal. They all took a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, and then not until you and I started having this conversation did it start to make sense. Like, oh shit, that's what they're doing. They are fast tracking people into plea deals and not giving them enough time to wrap their heads around it, be prepared after they were already prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, and all of that to have a trial on the date that scheduled. Because I'm sure they noticed that the first notice that they got was this is scheduled for a 2-day trial on this particular date.
Yes.
And then you get there and it's something different.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a paper they give you. It's called standby 2-day trial.
Right.
And they tell you just to read it, understand it, and look what date that you got on that calendar. I was saying the same thing that you were saying. I call it Captain Hook, though. I feel like they hooking them in. Basically, they reeling them in. They got them against they got the back against the wall. Well, dartboard too. You know what I mean? Whatever one you want to call it. Because it's like basically you either going to fold and just take the deal, or you going to try to like take your chances and flip the coin and go 50-50 with the jury. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or bench with the judge. But like you said, it doesn't give you enough time to really process.
No. And it goes back to that question we always say when somebody takes a plea deal and the judge asks, have you been threatened, coerced, or promised anything, you know what I mean, for you to enter in this plea deal? And 100% of the people, at least that I have seen, have said no. And this process that they're engaging in now with the so-called stacking of these trials is that how can you say no when literally you have set made the window to decide so small without your representation, without time to think, without probably your discovery or anything that you need to determine, make an educated decision of whether or not you want to take it to trial, if you want to take a plea deal, whether you want jury or bench. Like there's literally not enough time for you to make all those choices with valid information. So for them to sit up there and be forced to say, no, nobody coerced or promised or threatened me anything for me to take this plea deal is perjury. And not that I want defendants to be charged with perjury, but they're literally purging themselves because they've been threatened.
Yes. And not just only that. Not just only that, it's also, and you're completely right about that, it also gets the lawyers off of the hook. Because I know a couple of my guys that I went down there and supported when it came to their last thread, and that's all they had was either a deal or a trial. A lot of the lawyers they weren't happy with. They wanted to give for ineffective counsel, and it kind of willed them in to have to say, like you said, under oath, a lie that they were satisfied with their counsel.
Right. Yeah, that part
really wasn't,
Right.
So, and then it's like the judges are giving you limited because they tell you straight up, like you're going to lose all your appeal rights, and you only have 3 if you take this guilty plea, and you're like limited to being able to do anything.
Right.
And and another thing they're hooking into is that they're keeping the attorney that's on your case when you take the guilty plea. they're making it even better for them not to get an effective counsel, because they're telling them that they're going to represent you for the next 30 days through your appeal process.
Difficulties. What were you saying? I'm sorry, like we both swirled.
I said that they are actually still willing you in too, because they're also telling the attorneys and telling you, once you take the deal, that you had to keep the same attorney for the 30 days to do your appeals through the first process. So you can't even get your attorney for ineffective counsel if you really wanted to.
Right. So,
because
and I was going to ask you that,
like, that some of these lawyers are ineffective.
Right. Yeah, and I
to
was
be
going to
fired.
ask you that. Because if you did have, an insane moment or out of body experience where you said, no, I'm not satisfied with my attorney. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to give you 30 days to work it out with your attorney.
Exactly. I wanted to get rid of him yesterday, and you got me 30 more days with him.
Oh gosh. And so what's the importance of knowing who the ADA is, and like when the docket, because I've complained about incomplete docket information for a long time, and really and never really knows, because we don't know that the ADA is not the proper ADA until you're actually in the courtroom. You can't tell that with the docket. But also on the docket is missing demographic information. Sometimes you don't know if it's a man. It's not listed that it's a man or a woman, if they're what nationality or race or whatever they are, where they live. Sometimes the defendant information is vacant, like it's not there. It never, and it never gets updated at a later point in time. But with the ADA, I mean, you kind of touched on a little bit within O'Neill's court that when he's fast tracking. But that's not just happening in the fast tracking scenario, is it? Is it happening in other courts that are kind of a slower pace?
Yeah, no. Like you said, different strokes for different folks. Every judge has their different tactics. Every judge, like you said, run their courtroom the way that they run it, and some of them run it not always the legal way.
Right.
Do a lot of illegal things. But as I was reading the other day on a segment of who has the most power inside of the courtroom, it isn't the judge. It actually is the ADA.
Okay.
They have the most power when it comes to the courtroom, because they make and break the deals, and they make and break the charges that you're going to be charged with.
Right.
And the judge only can give you the law.
Right.
And really the only time the judge really makes or breaks the ADA's power is if you go a bench trial with a head up with the judge.
Right.
And we know,
and it's not often that the judge is going to go against the ADA. Like they'll chastise them and hold them accountable and make them do their job. But yeah, it's not, often that the judge will go against or not go with whatever the ADA recommendations are.
Exactly. Because they just had a big win the other day for a murder trial in Norristown. They got every bit of outside of the guidelines for a young man.
Right.
Nowhere near rehabilitation status. Just straight.
Is that the homicide one that just got 50 years?
Yes, 50 to 100 years.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
He would be 70 years old if he's going to die. It's death by incarceration. Right. So we already know how that goes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we were all curious, because was he 17 at the time, or is this the one that was 18? Yes,
he was 17 at the time.
And so, I mean, I thought, well, every state is different. I was going to say 25 is like,
life.
Practical life. You know what I'm saying? 25 years.
Wasn't really supposed to give him more than 35 years. But Harper just decided to go outside the guidelines and charge him with the max. Is it going to probably hold up? Never know, because laws change every day.
Right.
He was a juvenile, so that was the whole point of juveniles not being able to get life. So they came
Right.
to
But he maxed him out at the time.
but he maxed him out,
Right.
and he gave him 5 decades.
Right.
And
And go ahead.
me personally, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I think Carpenter made up for the mess up that he did when the initiator of the whole situation, he only slapped on the wrist with 6 years. So
And
he made
you
examples
can't
to look
compensate
at.
that. That's not compensating though.
Not at all.
He did that. That was on purpose. But he's
Not at all.
thinking, oh, if I give the shooter all of her time, and because that's where I was going to go. That's exactly where I was going, because the person that orchestrated this crime got the least amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the most insane thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
when you look at it, I'm not surprised. The
No.
family should be, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm gonna call a spade, and I'm not, I'm far from, racist. I have a lot of, Caucasians in my family.
Right.
But that just goes to show you that black and white still matters when it comes to justice. Because
Absolutely.
I just had in a trial 6 months ago, almost similar situation, a setup, and this young lady paid her baby father's first cousin to kill a school teacher because of an affair that he was having with her. And she had her son in the car, and he pulled up and shot her in a parking lot.
Right.
And she had one of the best lawyers in Philadelphia, out of Philadelphia, Shaka Johnson.
For sure.
And he had a nice attorney, even though we had have our ups and downs with him, but he had been
Right.
Cooper. And I sat in that trial, and they both did a hell of a job.
Yes, they did.
Both of them came out with first degree
murder.
And she was the orchestrator, and she got actually the enhancement because of her being the solicitor of the crime.
Exactly.
So you're not
going to. And that was in front of Carpenter.
And that was in front of Carpenter.
And this is something, and we're just talking at this point. The Philadelphia, and this is the difference between counties, right? And DAs. So in Philadelphia, the only reason why it came back up in the news was that the young man from Bucks County that shot and killed, and I didn't know to the degree that he shot this officer, the Temple officer. He shot him 31 times in the face, stood over top of him, looked at him, and shot him 31 times. The only reason why this is back up in the news is that he got assaulted while in custody, while waiting trial. So he hasn't even gone to trial yet. But along with that, the DA and Larry Krasner, I happen to like Larry Krasner. So it's like, it's weird, the dynamics. He's not seeking the death penalty. And not to say that, you know what I mean, I'm a proponent of the death penalty, but I don't even know that he's seeking life. I don't know if life and the death penalty, like, you know what I'm saying? So he flat out said he's not seeking the death penalty for this crime that was so vicious.
Yeah. Well, I guess that the death penalty reason he probably didn't seek it is because Pennsylvania is one of them on the scale of death penalty isn't really held here. And a lot of jurors here don't know how to make that decision, because we had a big death penalty case here in Montgomery County last year when Kevin Steele was the head DA on that one. And it was a young woman that got killed in King of Prussia at a gas station, and she was with child. And they seek the death penalty, and that phase is very expensive when it comes to prosecution, because you got to have multiple lawyers on that, because you have the lawyer with just the regular trial, and you have a lawyer that goes to the death penalty phase. So you got one trial, but you get 2 phases in that trial. And when it comes to that, they were seeking the death penalty for this man. I know Frank Genovese was one of the top lawyers on that one, and it was a death penalty lawyer on as a co-defendant on him.
Okay.
And the jury came back where they couldn't make a decision for death.
Right.
Because I guess juries feel like they already making the decision to giving somebody life. It's a little
Right.
easier, and that still is hard for some of the jurors too.
Right.
But pretty much play God is really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that makes sense, you know what I mean? And I feel for the family. And then like taking someone's life, via the death penalty does not bring your loved one back. It doesn't, take away any of the pain. It doesn't do anything. It's just that they just don't, get to live in prison anymore. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
and I feel like they don't get to suffer from what they
what
done.
the situation is. So yeah, it's just like all these different dynamics, and we understand, and it has political implications when it's election season and things like that, when people are having to appease all types of people, and like you just said, having to make that decision to really take someone's life versus, can I sleep at night by sending somebody to jail for life, or can I sleep at night because I ordered somebody to die? You know what I mean? And I think that's a heavy decision for people to make, and it is a costly argument for it not to go that way the majority of the time. So, go ahead.
No, I was going
to. No, I was just about to say we diverted.
I was going to piggyback off what you said about Philadelphia real fast.
Go ahead.
Philadelphia also, I could see Krasner not taking that step either, because Philadelphia is they are of law. We saw that they're way different. Right. They play the law all the way, but they also do a lot of breaking the law down in Philadelphia too. And a lot of the overturnments of these cases that people are coming back out, because we just seen Mr. Wallace just came home after 26 years of incarceration, is because of the corruption inside of the detectives' offices, the police departments, the DA's office, and even the judges. And the thing about Philly is they don't hide their corruption. But here in Montgomery County, they hide theirs well.
Right.
And the sad thing about it is that if we had more advocacy programs and people for second chances in the fighting program like Philadelphia has, I would believe that our overturnment rate would be just as high as Philadelphia's.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, and that's why we do what we do. You know what I mean? Bottom line, that's what we do. Let us do it no more for whatever reasons. So we're going to take a break because we do have another case that we want to give some time to. And so we're going to go into our little commercial. We have a couple of little things that we want to share with y'all that we got going on here at the Bail Fund, and some a new project that we have coming up. So I'm going to take a minute and check out this commercial, I think that Zach made. There we go. And so Giving Tuesday is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So you see our Got Bail. I got the hoodie on. We've got t-shirts that are going for $20 from now until Giving Tuesday. So you can get yours before they're gone. That was our preview at our 5-year anniversary open house. That was about 2 weeks ago. So folks was copping their tees that day, and so they're still available if you want to get yours for Giving Tuesday. They're going for $20. So yes, don't delay and get that. We also have our teen self-care summit coming up. This is our first ever, and thank you to Taria and her organization Signs of Hope for brainstorming this and helping us walk through it and create it, and all these volunteers that we have at the beginning stages. There's definitely going to be more. This is our first stab at providing a self-care summit for our teenagers ages 13 to 18 plus. We definitely, around the holiday seasons, want to make sure that our teenagers are taken care of. Our little people, people love to shop and buy toys and, just shower them with all types of gifts and things that make noise and sparkle with lights. And so our teenagers just are kind of like in that middle, and we want to focus on that. We want to stand in the gap for them and make sure that they have some of the toiletries, and none of these. We see coat drives all the time. Well, I don't know no teenager that's wearing a coat. They wear hoodies, and they, they're just different, have different needs in the way they want to present themselves. And so we have DJ Swerve that's going to be on the ones and twos. We got the Queens program that's going to be doing some mentoring workshops and introductions to their program. Restorative Norristown is going to be doing some peace circles and opening, closing with some of the restorative practice, and Boys to Men also too. So we'll have the mentoring for the girls, mentoring for the boys, all types of hygiene products, food. You can come get some grub. We're going to have some door prizes, do some fun guided painting and meditation, all just introducing them to some self-care options. And as we get closer to the date, there may be more activity. Get registered, register your team, because the space is limited to 50 teams. So we don't want anybody to miss out. If we can have capacity for more, we will certainly open it up. We won't turn anybody away, but you might not get all the things that you're looking for. So that is definitely something that we are excited about and thankful for our community partners. This is just the start of the community partners. We have a dozen plus people that have signed up already to support and donate and volunteer. So there's plenty of space to do so. Just hit us up, hit up Taria, you can hit me up. All the links and things are on that page. And so the Queens program is also, one of the Queens is Yane Weldon, who has Bodies by Ya. So she's doing a toiletry drive for us. So hers going to the 18th, but also too, my daughter, EJ PYT, is doing a toiletry drive for us at her upcoming performance at El Jefe on December 13th. So you want to come out and show support for PYT, bring a toiletry, drop it in the box, enjoy the night of music and fun there, and get to sample some new artists. Okay. And so before we get into the last case, we want to talk about, hopefully we can have a moment of silence for Robert Fisher. Robert Fisher is a case that we've covered several times. We've talked about it several times. And his case has been tried like 5 times. It's been hung jury, prosecutorial misconduct. The judge gave inappropriate guidelines and things like that. Like there was a bunch of things that happened that caused his case to be retried like 5 times. And Taria, we talked about this a bunch of times. Like, how many times does the DA get a bite at the apple, right? How many times do they get the prosecuted case until they get the answer that they want? Like, because just like a defendant can appeal, that appeal process can take years. But when the DA, like they got 30 days and you're back in court, in 6 months. You know what I'm saying? So before you answer, let's have a moment of silence for Robert Fisher, who has since passed away while incarcerated on charges. Thank you. And Robert Fisher, I'm sure your family is sad to see your life come to an end in such a way, with, a cancer diagnosis in prison, is a death sentence also. Any major health concern can be a death sentence for folks that are incarcerated. I'm not going to go derail and go down the rabbit hole of the whole health care system in prison. That can be a whole nother show. But the last bit of this tonight's show, we are going to dedicate to Robert Fisher and his legacy of fighting, his legacy of, going up against the system to the very end. I mean, literally earlier this year, I think was his last attempt at freedom. And that case, I mean, prior to that case, there was a hung jury, and there were still some living witnesses at that time. After the hung jury, you know what I mean, they tried him again. Every single witness, any other person that was involved in that trial is dead. So literally, this was a trial of literally reading transcripts. And, you know, within, I think, 20 minutes that the jury came back with a guilty verdict. And here we are, maybe 8 months later, he passes away. So, Taria, what are your thoughts? Because you're a Narstonian. I'm not a Narstonian. So, you know, some of these stories, you know, are before my time, and, you know, not necessarily, you know, I don't know what street Mr. Fish lived on. I don't know how y'all Narstonians identify people. What block they live on, what street. So tell me about Mr. Fisher and his legacy, and just watching, you know, like 45 plus years that he's been fighting this case.
I was actually just a baby when Mr. Fisher actually went into prison, but being as though that I was able to be blessed to have a great grandmother that lived in 96, a grandmother that lived in 87, and another grandmother that lived to 87, and a grandfather that lived 88, and my father is still living. So my father was actually in the era of Mr. Fisher, and some guys that Mr. Fisher hung out with at the time that all this supposed to have taken place in Norristown off of DeKalb Street. And you always heard about the story because it implicated another big time person in Norristown inside of the situation, but it never got to pack that anybody else was involved. So you always just heard of the Bobby Fisher case. So it was like until about 3 years ago, we knew of a public defender that was supporting Bobby Fisher. And before she left, that's how we got intact with Bobby Fisher. And we rode away with him after that. Being able to personally meet this a credible, and I'm going to call him a legend, because he was a legend, even though he never got to prove that out here in the streets and come back here to his freedom. But like you said, he fought to the end until the death of him. You know what I mean? So that right there alone goes down as, to me, he's a hero. You know, he been through many wars. He fought them, and his ending was his battleship. And to me, I give my hats off to him and give him his flowers. Why, you know, he could have smelled them, and he knew that because we supported him, and we sat in that courtroom with him, and we sat there with him, and we went down to the end with him. And speaking upon to him, he was a very intelligent man, very without the background of having a murder on his jacket, you would have thought that he was way smarter than some of these lawyers that even was trying to assist them. And that was the problem. He was too smart that nobody could stop him. And he wouldn't just take no for an answer, and he wouldn't give up. So that's why a lot of attorneys didn't want to touch his case, or they recused themselves from his case, because he wasn't just letting you just throw him to the wolves like they wanted to do. So it saddened me when I seen in the paper the other day that how they wrote the headline was a notorious man of 4 decades and 4 hung juries and 4 times on double death on death row dies in prison. That was the headline for him, you know, and it was saddened to me, because in all this time they never gave this man a good write-up, even in his time when he couldn't even write for himself. And in the mix of him dying, he was in his PCRA phase of trying to get this appealed for the 6th time, because we know that it wasn't done right for the 5th time for him. And it's no way that you have just transcripts, no living witnesses, and you go into a jury box for 20 minutes and come back as him being guilty. Nah, that was corruption within itself. And they knew that if he beat this time, that he was going to walk home a free man. And that's all I was rooting for him to do, is walk out that jail just to say, I'm free at last, knowing that he was of age. I mean, I think Mr. Fisher was almost 78 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, he didn't have that much time left here on Earth. And I just feel as though they could have let him go. He did his time plus more.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, everybody else that was associated with the crime had already been home. They'd been home 20 plus years already. And that's what happens when, and we see that with the, a lot of the juvenile lifers, or a lot of the felony murders and second degree murders, that, you know, the ones that didn't have anything to do with the crime plead not guilty. The ones that committed the crime plead guilty, they get a plea deal and they get their sentence, they do their time and they come home. The ones that believe that they're not guilty or did not have a part in that crime, and they're just lumping everybody together, there's the ones that take their chances with the trial and take their chances with 12 and get found guilty and get the life fucking sentence. And have to do double digits decades, you know what I mean, to come back and you know, proclaim their innocence or accept a guilty plea of some sort just to get out of jail.
That's right.
That's a tough fucking pill to swallow, is that you have to sit up there and admit to something you did not do just to secure your freedom.
And we had a couple guys like that. We had a couple guys like that just came home in the last 3 years, where they had to dummy down and take a plea to something that they didn't do if they wanted to see the day of light again. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's shameful. It's absolutely shameful. And so, well, you know, when they say, you know, when people pass and, you know, there's no more suffering, he's no longer in jail. Prayerfully, he is, you know, transitioned into something more beautiful than what this world had to offer him, because they really did him dirty. We saw him getting the Medal of Honor from Lyndon B. Johnson, you know, as a war hero, as a veteran, as someone who suffered from the impact of combat war. You know, and you know, I believe the community, the system failed him, you know, from the veteran, the VAs on down. So that's something just to be mindful of, you know, as we continue through this journey on life. We usually have the WTF moment. I'm going to skip that tonight. It just doesn't feel right after honoring him to go into that. And so as we close out this season 2 of Purely Speculation, Taria, it's been an honor. I appreciate you. I thank you for all the commitments, all the glitches in video and phone and technical stuff. Like, you held it down. You've been in the hospital, you've been in the rehab, you've been everywhere, and you showed up consistently. And so that, I appreciate you. I love you for it. I want to thank all of the people that attended our 5-year anniversary. Go to our YouTube page. All of the guest speakers that were there, I mean, phenomenal guest speakers. Raj Jayadev from San Jose, California, Debug, where the founders of Participatory Defense was created out of necessity. Rev Michelle Simmons from Why Not Prosper, right here in Norristown. She holding it down for the women in Philadelphia, the women that are coming home from incarceration. Like, she is holding it down, something crazy. Fox and Rob, that's like taking this movement to the and doing this work. And our own board president, Yvonne Platts, and her rendition of Fannie Lou Hamer and how it relates to Not on the List was just so incredible. But I'll go back and say about Fox and Rob, the Oscar nominated documentarians who are just keeping us apprised of what's going on and the things that need to be changed, and really just taking it to a global platform. And we are just so appreciative of them, those that donated, those that supported. Our board that sponsored the green room of the Eagles Dallas game was playing, Go Birds, and all the artists that participated in the art auction. It was just a beautiful display. It's incredible artwork. And again, they were all formerly incarcerated, and the beauty that comes out of such a dark and oppressive place is just a testament to the resilience of our people. And the food vendors, Trejos and Sade's delicious grubs, I mean, it was just off the hook. She was walking it up all night. And if you didn't get there, you missed a truly dynamic event. And not last but not least was Push and Pudding. You know, them tins was flying. And, you know, that's one of the, you know, signature treats at the end of the night. And it was just a really good time. So again, check out our YouTube channel to see all of our speakers, all of our social media. The previous episode of Purely Speculation 2 weeks ago, you can see that as well. And just stay tuned, get registered, sign up, subscribe, like, follow, share all of our social media platforms, because season 3 is going to be spectacular. We got some new things. Obviously, we got going into a new season. We got to have some new stuff. So looking forward to revealing all of the new things and all of our new guests and all of the diabolicalness that's going to happen in 2025. Oh my God, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. But you told me something earlier, Taria. Tell me again, because the inauguration is on, and I think this is such a great way to end this season. The inauguration of the next presidency is going to be on MLK Day. So yes. Tell me and tell everybody else, because I didn't catch it, is what MLK's daughter said about inauguration being on.
Yes, Miss Bernice King, Martin Luther King's youngest daughter, spoke upon that she is so happy that the inauguration is falling on her father's legacy day. And everybody was like wondering, like, was she tripping? And because she has said a lot about President 47 that's coming in. And her comeback was she was basically saying that it falls on a beautiful day because it's freedom, justice, and she speaks upon that her father is definitely still looking down upon us. His vision is still here. And she was just telling us all that even though we was doomed after the November 5th day, to just let us all know that we need to hold on, because change is going to come and her father's going to foresee the change that's going to happen for us. And our future is near and we are not going back. We are going to continue to go forward.
That's right. We're not going back. And we're going to end on that. Appreciate you, sis.
Appreciate you too.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Purely Speculation. If you learned something, share something. Please like, follow, and share this show. The more our communities know, the more they are empowered, and the faster we can create change. Purely Speculation would not be made possible without the generous support of the Community Justice Exchange, the Health Sparks Frank E. Boston Black Justice Fund, Philadelphia Foundation, and Reform Alliance. Thank you. Booyah.
Intuition different, already lived and dreamt it. Visions make my vision clear as I'm jogging through this fog of life. I be fog lights with the fog set, body and I'm all set. Baby, can you be my Cardi B on an offset? Toast we got it, self we build.